Welcome to The Vault at 201 North Broadway, podcast for innovators and problem solvers talking all things small business, entrepreneurship, and workforce development.
Today's guest has been working with animals for over 20 years and has worked in zoos throughout the country, including the Columbus Zoo in Ohio and Tampa's Lowry Park Zoo in Florida. And we may even hear about his work with alligators and birds of prey. He revived our local gem, ZooMontana, at a time when its future was unknown. Welcome, the man, the myth, the legend, Jeff, the nature guy.
Thank you, Visit Billings, for sponsoring this episode of The Vault. Visit Billings is a leading tourism brand in Montana comprised of the Billings Tourism Business Improvement District and the Billings Convention and Visitors Bureau. Together with partners like Big Sky Economic Development and the Billings Chamber of Commerce, Visit Billings is committed to supporting the business community by working to provide tourism sales, services, and marketing support at Montana's Trailhead. More than 2.6 million people visit Billings annually, spending $621 million. The Visit Billings staff works to grow the visitor economy and support Billings hospitality and tourism partners. Travel to visitbillings.com for more details.
Welcome, Jeff. Thanks for joining us today.
Wow, what an intro. I don't even know what to say. I'm dumbfounded. That was so kind. Thank you. So excited to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you.
Like we're literally inside of a vault.
We are.
Yes.
So the cool thing about this vault, and I don't know if we've ever mentioned it before, is that this was actually a master vault.
They called it a monster vault.
Monster vault.
Yep.
Look, I'm trying to give a fact and I get it wrong. My
It's
bad.
okay.
Can I tell you something I'm not proud of?
Sure.
I'm a little late today because I went, even though you gave me explicit directions, I went to the Yams vault.
Oh.
And I was like, wait, this isn't where I need to be. So, yeah.
I'm so
I'm
sorry.
glad I got to experience this new place.
Also a cool vault.
It's also a cool vault. And I was like, well, that's cool. I like the vault. But
Maybe
anyway,
we'll have to do like an offshoot episode there one day.
I'm in.
That'd be fun.
So, anyway, had to let that be known.
I love that. Somebody that you guys can't hear from that is also joining us today is a lovely little tarantula that you brought with us.
I did. You know me. I don't travel anywhere without an animal. It's
Yeah.
very rare for me to
We
do
know.
so.
Yeah.
And so when I have to speak without an animal, I'm very uncomfortable. So I had to bring something. So I brought this tarantula because there is a social injustice of wildlife, and tarantulas are a victim of it because no one likes them. Everyone gets freaked out. Everyone's scared of them. But in reality, they're actually really docile critters. At least this particular species is.
Yeah. So tell us more.
You bet. So this is what we call a Chilean rose-haired tarantula. It's got a beautiful rose hue to her kind of
Very beautiful.
So
thorax.
is it a girl or a boy?
So I keep going back and forth. It is a boy. I apologize.
Oh, no,
It's a
I just
he.
didn't know because I was saying he earlier and I'm like, God dang, did I get it wrong?
No, I do that all the time.
My
I'm
mom does that with
terrible.
our cats too.
Yeah, I'm bad about it, so I apologize. It's a he. His name is Taboo, and he is
Taboo?
as I said, Chilean rose hair. But here's the thing about tarantulas. Everyone gets freaked out that they're big spiders, and people think spiders want to bite to kill you. In reality, as far as we know, no one's ever been killed by a tarantula in the world, in human history.
Yeah.
Their bite just isn't strong enough. Their venom isn't strong enough to affect us. It's more like a bee sting. It's going to hurt. It's going to itch for a little while, swell up. That's about it. What you do have to worry about them, though, is on their abdomen, their hairs on their body, they can actually rub those hairs off. And so if you're an animal trying to eat the tarantula and you get down close to eat it, it's going to rub those hairs off, and those hairs are going to fly through the air and get stuck in your eye or your skin. And it's a lot like fiberglass. And so while you're like, hey, trying to get all that stuff out of your eye, she's making a getaway, and she's nice and safe. So that's really what you got to worry about most on a tarantula, not so much their bite.
Okay.
Interesting.
How
Yeah.
fast can Taboo move?
Pretty quick. I mean, they're not going to chase you by any means. And here's the other thing is they're not going to jump at you. Tarantulas, what I love about tarantulas is as big and crazy and beefy as they are, they look like they're monsters. They're actually really delicate. In fact, one of the most delicate animals in the animal kingdom. And what I mean by that is if I were to drop her from the height that we're at right now, sitting down, she would literally, and I'm not being crazy here, she will break apart. She will break
Oh my
open.
gosh.
It's crazy. And so that's why these big tarantulas like this, they don't jump because it's too dangerous for them. Now, there are species that do jump, but most of them, they're going to do what she's doing right now, and that's just sitting.
Just sitting. I mean, yeah, he just looks like Just lounging out.
That's all he's doing. Yeah, he's
Just hanging
opportunistic too, so he's gonna wait for his food to come to him. So unless you're gonna like manhandle him and throw him all around,
I wish we would have known. We could have brought him a snack.
he probably would have liked a snack. I could have brought a cricket.
So what kind of, I was like, what does he eat?
Crickets, little baby mice, they're called pinkies. I know that's sad, but it's a good food for him. And here's where it gets crazy is when he, of course, finds his food, he'll inject the venom in it, and it actually turns the insides into goo, and then he's got this little mouth part that he sticks in, and he
slurps it out.
Yeah, it's like a Slurpee.
interesting.
It's awesome.
Does anyone remember that movie, like...
Arachnophobia?
Well, that, but the killer clowns from outer space?
I do. I have
Didn't
not
they do
seen
that?
it. I think they may have, actually, yes.
This is terrible. References the Killer Clown movie. Yeah. So he's just kind of sitting, because I noticed when you had him earlier, he spread out more. So in just like a normal state of chill, he just curls up.
Yeah, he's gonna He's gonna kind of bring his legs in a little bit, and just he's comfortable right now. And so unless we're hitting the table hard and causing mass vibrations, he's gonna be pretty chill right there.
He's gonna be hanging out. He's got his like little leg out.
Yeah,
like he's classy.
He's pretty happy.
I like it.
Exactly. So, but don't worry, they're not gonna jump on you, not gonna attack you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for introducing the silent partner in the crowd.
You bet. I wish he made a noise.
That would be cool.
Should have brought the kookaburra is what I should have done.
My favorite is that sometimes I can get him to like make noise.
Yeah, absolutely.
That
we
one
can
is
do it
a
on
ton
cue.
of fun.
So we'll do this again.
We'll come visit,
All right.
actually.
Yes, I am going to get
it.
a safari outfit and come visit.
As long as you have that pith hat, that like it's like a safari hat. You know what I'm talking about? They're called pith hats.
Okay.
I don't know why they're called that. But
I'm gonna make sure I have one.
All right.
And we'll have just a fun day of it.
All right. Sounds good. I'm ready. I'll wear my vest and look animal guy as well.
Okay, sounds great. Well, let's jump into a little bit more about you. Where did you grow up?
So I'm a Cleveland guy, west of Cleveland.
rocks,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I love Cleveland. I'm a Browns fan. Always will be till the day I die. In a little suburb called Avon Lake, Ohio, and had a great childhood. I was very fortunate.
Oh, that's awesome.
I just have a quick question.
Yes.
Yeah. So with your childhood, growing up, did you have a lot of interaction with animals? What really sparked that for you?
Yes. So a couple things. So my parents were always great at taking us out on hikes and seeing wildlife and pointing wildlife out. And that would be a weekend activity for us, is to go and you look for birds and what have you. So that certainly sparked it as a young age. But when I was in the 6th grade, I did a shadowing project for our school. It was a middle school project, and I had to shadow somebody in a career. And I shadowed a gentleman at a science center in a little town west of Cleveland. And at the end of the day, the guy let me hold a little owl. And when that owl hit my hand, something happened to me, and my passion was being born. And I know that now.
Your aha moment.
My aha moment, right. And at the time, I didn't know what the heck was going on, but I just knew something magical was happening here. And so I just knew that birds of prey and holding this animal is what I was destined to do. I know that sounds cheesy, but it happened. And I stuck with that my entire life and wanted to make it happen, and certainly had it ups and downs as everybody does, but finally landed where I needed to be. And here we are.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that. Well, you've worked in several zoos throughout your career. Can you share your journey and experiences that you encountered throughout this?
Sure, absolutely. So when I first started, and we see this a lot in the business, is that when individuals want to work with animals, there's often a thought that you can just go into a zoo, apply, and work with animals. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. You have to have a lot of experience.
It's like running a daycare. You actually have to have some licensing.
Have to have some licensing, right? And in the world, what's difficult is that it's like, to get experience, how do you get experience on something that you need experience to do, right?
Yeah.
So it was a very difficult thing. So I remember I went to a community college in Cleveland, and then I moved down to Columbus and transferred to Ohio State. And when I was at Ohio State, I wanted to work at the Columbus Zoo, and I applied, and I was like, I'm going to start working with animals. Well, it didn't work that way. I started working at the concession stand. So I sold hot dogs and Pepsi for 2 years at the Columbus Zoo. Got
Just
my foot in the door.
Pepsi or Pepsi products?
Well, Pepsi products. Yeah, I probably shouldn't. Say the actual term, the name of the product. But anyway, we sold soda and hot dogs, and I did that for 2 years, and it was great, and I loved it. And got my foot in the door and started to get to know people, and then finally landed a job working in the barn. And at the same time I was doing that, I was volunteering in a local rehab center and kind of getting some experience with animals that way as well. And then after another year, finally landed a job working with the birds of prey. It was like a dream come true for me. And so that's kind of started off my training career. And then from there, I graduated from Ohio State with a degree in environmental interpretation, and then moved down to Tampa, Florida, and was what we call the animal ambassador manager down there. So my sole job was not only, of course, taking care of our ambassador collection, which literally was a collection of, I don't know, it was like 200 animals or something like that.
Wow.
And so we were in charge of training those animals for programming. And so for ed programming and on-site programming. And then we did that programming as well. And then we also did training around the zoo for medical procedures. So we would train, like, for example, train a rhino to present its hindquarter so we can, draw blood. And so doing animal training in lieu of knocking an animal down to get blood, it's just so much better for the animal and for the keeper as well. And then once I was in Tampa, I was in Florida for almost 10 years, and Florida just wasn't for us. It was too hot. I'm not a humidity guy. I'm a cold weather guy.
Lots of bugs.
Yeah, right, exactly. Lots of bugs, which that was cool. I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to remember who you're talking to here.
Well, I just mean like
all right to me.
mosquitoes.
Well,
that's painful.
Mosquitoes have a purpose too.
They sure
we
do.
can get into that if we need to. But my wife and I had just had a son and decided Florida wasn't where we wanted to raise him, and so essentially moved sight unseen to Montana, where I took a little job up at the wildlife center up in Red Lodge, the Yellowstone Wildlife Sanctuary. And then when I was there, started noticing ZooMontana had problems and was the only sucker dumb enough to apply for that director job. And next thing you know, I was directing ZooMontana. So it's been a journey.
Coming from Ohio, there's a couple things, and I can't wait to get into that because you've turned it around, and it's like such a amazing place and asset for our county. And it's such a beautiful place to be. But so you how did you, what was that like going from Ohio to Florida? Like what was that journey? And then I also want to know, what did you, I always have multiple questions. Montana, what did you think of Montana before you moved? But let's start with Ohio to Florida.
So when I was a kid, we used to vacation in Florida quite a bit. And so obviously when I had the opportunity to take a job in Florida, I was like, oh, wow, Florida, it's where we used to vacation. It was going to be great. and there were parts that were, I will never, it will never get old to eat dinner on the beach, and watching the sunset and what have you. But at the end of the day, what people often forget that when you live in Florida, if you've ever lived in Florida, is all that fun vacation stuff is great and you can do it on the weekends, but life goes on and you got to still do your laundry and you still got to, and doing that stuff in Florida is difficult. The traffic's insane. It's so ungodly hot all the time. And it just wasn't what we thought it was going to be. It wasn't that full-time vacation type of mentality there. So then moving to Montana. So, when this opportunity came in Montana, and the opportunity really was the at the time it was called the Beartooth Nature Center. We had never been to Montana. We had never set foot in the state. And
you just knew it had seasons and it was very dry.
We knew it had seasons. It was cold, which was really attractive to us. And it was just an outdoor mecca. So that's what we thought, is that it was just going to be an incredible place to be able to have our backyard be a playground. And that's exactly what it was. And so when we moved out here, I came out for the interview and was just awestruck by everything. And then my wife, bless her, she, came sight unseen, literally. The first time she ever saw Montana was when she was moving here. It was nuts. And we love it. We love it because of the playground that is Montana.
That's awesome. Well, before we jump into the huge story of you taking on ZooMontana,
right.
I promised people that you talk about your alligator experience.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So you got to tell us, because you mentioned that you've done some training with them.
Yeah.
I love for you to tackle more about the importance of training the zoo animals, because
Sure.
I think some people think that they're just there and
right.
you feed them through a hole and
yeah, no, and I appreciate that. And so, let's start alligators. So I love alligators. I miss working with alligators so much. There's two animals that I miss about Florida: alligators and manatees. Working with manatees was by far the highlight of my life. We had a rehab center in Tampa where we would bring in the injured ones and get them back out. And releasing a manatee back in the wild, there is nothing like it. It is by far my favorite thing I've ever done. And manatees are such an incredible animal that I think we as humans can learn so much from. They're just an easygoing, laid-back animal. Not much bothers them. They're awesome. So anyway, back to the alligators. I often talk to kids, as you guys know, in my programming. And one of the things I love to talk about are fears. And I always ask, because a lot of times kids are fearful of the animals we bring. Yeah. And I always like to tell them that, obviously we're here to make sure you're safe and all that fun stuff. But I always let kids know what animal I'm most fearful of. And I always say a horse. And believe it or not, horses terrify me. And I know I'm in Montana, so I get a lot of laughs from the kids and like, yeah, horses, and they think that's hilarious. But the reason I say that is that, you know, I had a bad experience when I was a kid with a picture of a guy that got injured by a horse. It's a long story. But anyway, I always tell kids I'd rather be on the back of a 20-foot crocodile or alligator than I would a horse any day. Horses are just way too smart. Crocodiles and alligators, they are smart, but not quite to the horse level. And so anyway, long story to say, I love alligators. I love being on the back of an alligator and wrangling them.
So you've tackled alligators.
I have, and I love it. I love it. Yes, absolutely. One of the things that I hated most about Florida, and we see this around the country, it's not just a Florida thing, but you know, anytime there's what we consider a nuisance alligator, they were always destroyed, and I always hated that. That you know, we move into their territory, this alligator's trying to survive, and then all of a sudden, you know, they're killed because they're just too close to people, which is always a bummer. So I always had a soft spot in my heart for animals like that are just victims of our encroachment into their territory. But alligators are misunderstood. You know, they really, I mean, they're a dinosaur. You know, they've been around for so long, and they've been such survivors. And the sheer power of an animal like that is just absolutely striking. To see what they can do to their prey or to, you know, whatever it is that they're going against is just wild. And then their tails, they use their tail as a big weapon. They're just magnificent for so many reasons. I just love them.
So how was training them? Like, what did that look like?
Right. So going back to what I said about training animals for medical procedures, you know, I have to be careful what I say there, because I don't want people to think that we are using animals for medical procedures.
Oh,
it's so what I always like to tell kids is, you know, when we go to the doctor, we may not like it, but when the doctor says it's time to give blood, you put your arm out and you give blood. Again, you're not happy about it, but you do it. And so let's train an animal to do that same thing. So if we need to take blood from our tigers, for example, rather than knocking that poor animal down and putting them under anesthesia and that risk and the stress on the animal and the stress on our caregivers, let's train that animal to willingly give blood just like we do. So our tigers are trained to actually do what we call a tail draw. So they come over, they turn around, they present their tail. We, of course, draw the blood. They get whipped cream in response. They're happy. We're happy. And it's a win-win situation. So in that kind of same context, when we would train the alligators and the crocodiles, really what we care most about on those animals are their teeth, to make sure their teeth are okay and make sure their jawline's good. And so we would train these alligators to come out of the water, and then we would do a little signal with our hands, kind of like open your mouth, and they would open their mouth, and we would be able to see those teeth.
That's awesome.
Pretty regularly. So pretty neat.
So can you train, sorry, I have so many questions about training animals, but can you train animals that are older? Or do you have...
Yeah, there is not an animal you cannot train. I guarantee you, with the right techniques and you know, the right knowledge, there isn't an animal you can't train. And people always say, what about cats? You can't train cats. Oh, absolutely you can. Mm-hmm. Cats are extremely smart and extremely trainable. They're just stubborn. And quite honestly, most of us that have animals at home, they're morbidly obese, and so they just have no interest in taking part. You know, but operant conditioning, which is the type of training we use, or it's called positive reinforcement. You know, that is something that an animal, we use that type of training because it gives the animal the choice to partake or not. And so anytime an animal doesn't want to partake in training, they have the choice to not do that, and then we'll back away. Too often than not, especially at home, we use negative reinforcement when we train our pets. Now, I'm not saying that you're beating your pet, but you're yelling at your pet, you're saying no, things like that. And at that point, when an animal hears negative reinforcement, they are only going to do what they need to do to the level where that negative reinforcement stops. So they're never going to gain any ground with the training, because they're going to do whatever they need to do to get you to stop yelling or whatever it is you're doing negatively to that animal.
It makes me think my aunt and uncle had a Rottweiler that she became diabetic later on in her life, but they trained her. She would lay down. She would put her arm out. She was so good about it. You would draw her blood and then give her insulin and give her a little treat, and she was just like a champ. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, you know, the dog's getting what she needs, and we're getting what we need. It's a win-win situation. Yeah. But what's funny is animal trainers, no matter who you talk to that's an animal trainer, the worst animal in their collection is their personal pet. I have the worst dog in the world, and I know what I'm doing, you know, but I am not good at training my house pet. It's weird. And most trainers are that way. It's bizarre. Yeah.
Oh gosh, I love that. Well, what is your favorite kind of animal to work with? Would it fall into the alligator or manatees, or
I'm a bird nerd. I always have been. It goes back to that owl in my hand. So when it comes to what's my favorite animal of all time, it's vultures. Vultures are such an unbelievably cool animal. They're crazy smart because they're social. So because they have a social lifestyle, we tend to see a little bit more intelligence in animals that live social lifestyles. But my 3 favorite things, and I'm going to tell you right now real quick, my 3 favorite things about vultures. First, they're bald, and they're bald so they keep clean. So because they have to eat the insides of the animals, and so they stick their head down inside the animal carcass. If he had feathers on his head, what a mess. It'd be blood and guts gooped up in those feathers. So the bald head keeps him clean. That's number 1. Number 2 is when they're hot, they poop down their own legs. And so that's why if you look, no matter what vulture species we're talking about, take a look at their legs, and they're all whitewashed. And that's because they do that. And the reason they do that is they can't sweat like we can. So they do that down their legs. It evaporates and cools them down. But their stomach acid is so strong that it actually eats the bacteria off their legs of the carcass that they're eating on. So it helps to curb bacteria, which is crazy.
So interesting.
So
Oh my
interesting.
gosh.
And then my favorite thing about them is when they're scared and they're upset, they're going to barf on you.
Oh,
But there's a reason to do that. Now, I'm anthropomorphizing a little bit here. So when we think of people throwing up, we're like, oh my gosh, somebody throws up in front of you, you run the other way. Remember in school, the chaos that would ensue. Well, that's what a lot of people think. That's why the vulture does that. But in reality, it does stink. It's the worst smell you will ever smell in your entire life. But in reality, why they're doing that is it's an offering to you. And so one of their biggest enemies are bald eagles. And so when they're on a carcass eating and a bald eagle flies down to get his part, obviously that bald eagle is going to rule that carcass at that time. So that vulture, terrified of his own well-being, is going to throw up to offer that food to the eagle. So the eagle eats it, and they do. And then at that time, the vulture is going to fly away and be safe. And so it's just kind of an offering. But those are 3 things that I think make vultures so cool.
That's so interesting because they're like funny to watch as you drive by, like on a highway always. Because in 2-lane highways, small town, nowhere, like they're always there because they're eating on whatever someone just.
Yeah.
Right.
I wanted to ask, when you say they're a social animal,
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So they live in large groups and,
Okay.
and they hang out together. And they love that interaction where a lot of times most birds of prey, especially your hawks and your owls and what have you, you don't see much interaction
pretty
between.
isolated.
They're pretty isolated, solitary, maybe just a mate. The other cool thing about birds of prey is that they're monogamous. And so they do to stay together the whole life, which is somewhat unique in the animal world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that interaction with other vultures then is what helps them like learn.
It does.
More.
Yeah. And like I said, we tend to see in social animals that intelligence factor is definitely a little bit higher to kind of understand that complexity of a social structure. But it's pretty wild. Yeah. Pretty neat stuff.
The faces I was making throughout all 3
I know.
of them.
I was like,
this just
gonna
keeps
have
getting.
to ignore our facial expressions.
I know. I'm trying. I'm trying hard.
It's just
Good thing this is a podcast.
So I have to ask, is like the bald eagle like the top notch, the guy
Well,
that everyone's like,
See, you're
better
gonna
not.
get me in trouble because no, it's not. Now, I don't mean that. It is our nation's symbol, so it's a glorious bird for that reason.
I don't mean that. But
But in reality, bald eagles. In fact, Ben Franklin fought really hard that the turkey would be our national symbol, and not the bald eagle. And the reason is that bald eagles they practice piracy. They steal from other birds, kind of like what I was talking about with the vulture. And so for that reason, Ben Franklin didn't want the eagle as the bird. They are magnificent birds. But I think the grand poobah of all the birds, probably the harpy eagle or the Andean condor. The harpy eagle is just this monstrous eagle found out in South America, and they are just they're huge. I can't even begin to tell you how big they are. And then the Andean condor is an incredible vulture found on the west coast of South America, and they are built to eat whale carcasses. So they are a 23-ish pound bird, 11-foot wingspan, very powerful.
11 feet.
Yeah, so
I'm looking at
That
pictures
harpy
right now.
eagle is huge.
That harpy eagle is huge.
That is terrifying.
that condor right there, that's what
He
we worked
looks
with.
so pretty though. Like his
Oh.
coloring is real. I mean, they're pretty.
This one reminds me, this is my Harry Potter, a hippogriff.
It does look like a hippogriff. You're
Do
exactly
you think
right.
that's where they got
terrifying.
It may be, actually.
They're a little scary. So a lot of people, I was just showing somebody this, and they were like, "That's not real." And I was like, "I think that is real,
real.
because they're this big. They're that big, right?"
They're huge. Absolutely huge. And they'll grab primates out of trees. In fact, that guy there, I know that guy is a friend of mine, and that's his harpy eagle, and it's absolutely wild. They're absolutely huge. I was blown away first time I saw a harpy eagle in person.
Oh my gosh. What the heck?
Yeah,
Everyone,
it's wild.
Google a harpy eagle and an Indian condor right now while you're listening.
Which I've I don't know if you want to tell this story right now, but I've sat in on a few different of your like presentations. Yeah. Was it a condor, that story about the little girl?
Yeah. So I was working. So I in full disclosure, I just had gotten my first job at working these birds. And so I was, self-admittedly, I was kind of cocky, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm working with these amazing animals. And, and every day we would walk this Andean condor through the zoo, and he was free to do anything he wanted. He could fly, he could run, he could do anything. He was not tethered to anything. And I was walking him one day, and I was real proud to be doing this. And, I thought, I know what I'm doing. And, when you're young, you got these great ambitions that you're the best of the best, when in reality you're not, which is a lesson you learn. But anyway, this condor ran ahead of us a little quicker, and when I ran around the corner, he was on top of a little 3-year-old girl, beating the tar out of her, kicking her and biting her and everything, and we were able to get the bird off and got the bird to safety, went back, checked the little girl. Fortunately, she was okay, a couple bruises and what have you, and like I said, she's
probably terrified of birds now.
Which I don't take that lightly. That's on me. But what I learned that day is, thanks to my supervisors, I thought for sure I was done and I was going to be fired, but he didn't. And obviously we went through the protocols of written up and all that. But he said, "Listen, Jeff, these bad things happen, but in 20 years you're going to look at it as a learning experience. You're going to understand these things. You have bad days, they pass." And he's so right. Bad things happen to good people all the time, and you get past, the world continues on. Why shouldn't you? It was a valuable lesson for me.
Yeah. That's awesome. I was going to ask, so has there been like an experience within your career where you really learned a lot about a specific animal?
Yeah, I mean, certainly.
But you had no idea. You're like, oh my gosh, wow.
Yeah, so manatees are certainly up there for me. Like I said, I just took so much away from manatees. It's just, they are such gentle giants. They really are. When we did, I never personally worked with elephants. I've worked around elephants, and just, kind of understanding the sheer power and the intelligence of those animals.
Oh, yeah.
And it really made me question whether or not elephants should be in zoological parks. And I think, in a rescue fashion, yes, but healthy elephants that, I don't know. It's a question that, that ethically I struggle with a lot. Because of how smart they are and how much room they need and what have you. So I think that was a big learning curve for me.
Well, I heard that elephants, their memory is amazing.
It's crazy. It's crazy amazing. Absolutely. Their memory, and then their social structure is absolutely amazing. They grieve when an animal dies, which is amazing. They can recognize reflections, which is, again, a crazy sign of intelligence. And so I think that, but I think overall, I think the biggest lesson that animals have taught me is that we as humans, we not only do we worry way too much, but we are not all that we think we are, and
we need to step back a little bit, right?
We really do. We really do. And I think that for me is the biggest lesson that animals teach me, is that these are incredible species, and we're wiping them off the face of this planet and not giving a care at all. And that's not okay. And I think, you've heard me in my talks before, I talk about, the circle of life, as cheesy as the Lion King could be with that circle of life, it is a real thing. And if we start losing these species, it's ultimately going to end up hurting us. And people just sometimes don't want to hear that. And it's frustrating. And so I think animals have taught me that, I don't know, there's just a lot we need to look at ourselves deep inside to understand that we're just not all we think we are.
Yeah. I love how Jeff keeps gesturing to the tarantula, being like, these wonderful creatures.
These wonderful creatures. Yes.
So let's hop back. So we talked about, Ohio to Florida. Now you got to Billings after you were in Red Lodge, and to ZooMontana. So you can pick it up from there.
Yeah. So Red Lodge, obviously, moving from Tampa, Florida to Red Lodge, Montana was a culture shock, to say the least.
I don't know why. It's very similar,
Holy
I think.
Cow, that was wild. 2,500 people from 3 million or something like that. So yeah, there were definitely a learning curve there. I loved this kind of, the sleepy mountain town vibe. I really did. But what I quickly found out is that the job that I had there, was a kind of a high profile job, just because everyone knew the nature center and they were all interested in who was coming to, run the nature center. And so a lot of people were in our business, and it's such a small town. There was a lot of like, hey, what's going on? Or, I'm going to come over to your house. And we didn't really want that.
I'm coming over.
Right.
Here's a casserole.
Right. So that was a little difficult to say the least. But that said, I had a great time in Red Lodge and great memories in Red Lodge. And obviously that place will always be close to my heart for that reason. But then Billings happened. And I'll tell you what, I kind of half joke when I say I was the only one dumb enough for the job. It was a really weird situation.
Yeah.
We I saw the headlines that the zoo was starting to have some issues. And then I came up. In fact, Big Sky Economic Development had a kind of let's save the zoo. I don't know if you were there at the time.
No,
I guess probably
yeah.
probably before your time. So I remember Steve ran it, and it was a bunch of community leaders coming together, and I showed up at that, and I felt really weird because here I'm at this young director from Red Lodge. What am I doing here? And I expressed interest that I want to help. And so I ended up having this really weird back alley meeting with the board of directors president in a bar, just talking about what my plans were and how I would like to bring the zoo back. And they bit. And the next thing I know, they're like, let's do it. And so I had a conversation with our board of directors in Red Lodge, and I ran both organizations for 3 months, kind of as a trial thing. And then after 3 months, we started seeing very, very small successes at ZooMontana. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And I always had a dream of directing an AZA organization. And so I took the job. And then one day before I took the job full time, we lost accreditation. It was great. So it was a
sign.
It was a sign, yeah.
A good sign that you're going to work hard at this.
Isn't that the truth? And so, so I came to Billings full time at that point.
Very cool. And so, from the zoo, where have you've taken it so far, but for those of us that maybe weren't in Billings or aren't from Billings that are listening in, what did you do to really get it to where it is today and get it reaccredited? Because if losing that was probably a big deal for the zoo. Yeah,
it was a huge deal. And so AZA is the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. And so it's an accrediting body. And so in the zoo world, we are governed by the USDA. And so they have a set of regulations, obviously, that we need to follow. We can have surprise inspections by them, what have you. AZA regulations and policies and protocols are much higher than USDA. And so AZA is a really important thing, just to let our guests know that it's the gold stamp of approval. There's like 3,500 animal facilities in the country, and less than 10% are accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. So it's a big deal. It's a feather in our cap. And for us, what it does, it separates us from the places like the Tiger King's place that he calls a zoo. I mean, we want those places shut down as much as everybody else does. Anyway, where I'm getting with that is that, losing that accreditation was big because it was our gold stamp of approval. And by losing that, we had fear that we were going to lose a lot of our animals, because animals that we had that were on loan from other AZA institutions had the right to pull those animals, and some did. And so those first couple of days were literally just on the phone with these other zoological parks saying, hey, we are still reputable. We are in the process of fixing. Some believed us and let us keep them, but some did pull our animals. We lost our wolverines, which was a big deal. And so it was scary, to say the least, at that point. But what did we do? So one thing I always talk about is leveraging your strengths, right? We all have strengths. Sometimes we're embarrassed to tell people what those strengths are, or maybe we feel cocky because but brag about yourself and leverage those strengths of what you're good at. And so for me, I knew that I was able to have fun on the news with news anchors, with animals. And I knew that audiences liked that interaction, because we had a great thing going in Tampa with the news. And so I reached out to our local news outlets and I said, hey, give me a shot. The press has not been good to ZooMontana. I understand why, because you haven't gotten the information you need. I promise I'll be transparent with you. Just give me an opportunity to come on the news and have some fun. And sure enough, we did, and we had fun. Their viewers liked it. We got a lot of great comments. And I always say, if we can make a news anchor scream at 6 a.m, it's going to be a good day. And so that's always been my mantra. So thankfully, thanks to the wonderful media that we have in this city, they saw that value. And so we started getting calls from not just TV, but radio and newspapers, and they started seeing that success. And so I was able to leverage that strength for good to get people to at least get the word out that ZooMontana was indeed still open. And then the other thing is just being very, very bold with your promises of what you can bring, but make sure they're obtainable. So, what I put out a list of, maybe 20 things that we want to accomplish within 5 years. knowing that most likely we were going to make that happen, but they were bold enough that when they did happen, people started taking notice. And right, cliches are everywhere, but success begets success. That is real. As soon as people started seeing the smallest amount of success at the zoo, people wanted to be a part of it. So we started getting phone calls. How can we help? What can we do? Can we do this? Can we do that? And then at that point, it just started spiraling, kind of out of control in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
But even to this day, 12 years later, we still have major growing pains that we're trying to work through. And really, it all comes down to that funding, And I don't say this, people are sick of hearing this, I understand, but I think it's important to note that we are just a handful of AZA accredited institutions, one of just a few that do not receive public funding. So because of that, we grow at a lot slower pace than our colleagues do. And sometimes people don't understand that. They get upset that we're a small organization, we don't have a lot of animals. We're forced to. We do. We would love to grow at the rate that some of the bigger zoos do, but we just financially cannot. So it just takes us a little bit longer to grow, which is important.
You guys too at ZooMontana, we have a lot of acreage, right? But because it's the animals have a little bit of a larger exhibit than maybe they would in other places, is my understanding. Is that correct? Yeah.
So what's really important to us is something we say quality over quantity, which means the quality of life for the animal is more important to us than how many animals we have. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people say, well, yeah, but you should grow. I agree. We certainly will grow, and we have a great master plan. But because we are going to grow slower and because we're going to really focus on quality and making sure those animals that are there get the best care possible. Other zoos do that. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus by any means. And the biggest zoos out there that have a lot of animals do incredible work. Absolutely. But we just have to be mindful and careful how we grow, that we can afford what we grow. But you're right. The size of the habitats, that's really important to us. Utilizing their natural landscape is really important to us. We want you to feel like you're walking through a park and get the bonus of seeing a grizzly bear as well. And I think that lends to a good conversation too of why our animals are there. We get animals for 3 reasons. Number one, ex-pets. You'd be shocked to know what people have in Montana. One of our grizzly bears was an ex-pet, for example. We get animals that are injured or are trouble animals. So one of our other grizzly bears is a real life Yogi the bear. And then the third reason we get animals are part of what we call the species survival program, which is an AZA program for breeding of the world's most endangered animals for genetic diversity. So if and when we need to release wild populations back into the wild, we have a genetically diverse collection of animals that we can do so there's no interbreeding and things of that nature.
Which animals are a part of that program at ZooMontana?
Yeah, we have quite a few. So our red pandas are our takin, which is that really weird
I love
stuff.
the takin.
Yeah, they're really cool. Our armadillo, our lynx, our otters somewhat are part of it, and then our wolverines. But the wolverines are part of the European breeding program, not the American one. America has not been very good at breeding wolverines, and so Europe kind of took over that program, and luckily we're one of the few zoos in the country that had wolverine babies this year.
Wow.
Oh, yes, and they're doing
so
well.
cool.
They're doing well, yeah.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Two?
2, yes. Yeah, 2, we think a male and a female. We haven't really gotten hands on them yet just because we want mom to do her thing, and so we're kind of letting her do her thing, and we'll get hands on them later.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
So-
it's exciting.
Jeff, you kind of skimmed over it, but I think I'd love to hear more. So you came into the zoo when it was getting how you did. It's not accredited, and then you got it to where it is now. And you talk about going on the news, so you understood like the value of being the face of something like that and really growing that. But obviously there were other leadership things and things that you did to get it to where it is with the team that you have or maybe have cultivated and built. Can you talk to us a little bit about that too?
Yeah, sure. I don't like talking about that I'm a leader. I don't know. I am, and I get that. But here's a couple things that I really, truly believe in. And number one is giving your employees freedom. I don't want to be a micromanager. I never have been. I never want to be. I've got an incredibly talented group of individuals that work at ZooMontana. Let them open their wings and soar, right? And so obviously, I'll be there for questions and things like that, but I want them to be them. I want them to do what they do best. And so that was number one, and making sure that they trusted me. And ZooMontana's had a checkered past. I believe I'm the 8th director in 25 plus years. Not even 25 years. That's insane.
And how long have you been there?
Been there for 12 years. So just give you an idea, I think the average life of a director at ZooMontana before me was literally maybe 5 years, if that. Some were a year, if that. And so my staff have been through a lot, and I was very mindful of that, listen, I'm here. I want to help bring this back, but you are you. Do what you do best, and if there's a problem, we'll talk about that, So giving that freedom, I think, was a really big deal for me. And then transparency. I'll never forget one of my first staff meetings I went to. I brought our profit, our P&L, our profit and loss, and I let the staff know, hey, here's where our dollars. They were blown away. They had never seen any of the numbers at ZooMontana. They're our staff. They need to know what's going on. So that transparency, not just for our staff, but for the community as well. And so those of you that see me speak, a lot of times if it's the right venue, I'll bring our where our money comes and where our money goes.
I was just about to say, yeah, you just did a presentation I was at, and right. you brought it up. You're like, this is where everything goes.
Absolutely.
How we spend all the money we get.
Right. We're a nonprofit organization that looks for donations. Everybody needs to understand where our money comes from and where our money goes. And the zoo has not always been that way. Like I said, the past, it was checkered, and there was a lot of, as far as I know, never fraud going on, but there was definitely, money being used where it shouldn't be used because they had to keep the lights on. So they would get a grant for a project, but then the power bill would come and they couldn't pay the power bill. So that was huge. And so for me, as we started that process of bringing the zoo back, I had to be very mindful that when I would talk to a donor, especially a long-term donor, that we used that money for exactly what they wanted. As hard as that was, there were times that I thought that we were going to have to put payroll on credit card. That's how bad in debt we were. And so ensuring that when I got a $20,000 grant to build a new habitat, I was going to build that habitat. No matter how much we were struggling to get payroll done, we'd find that out. But that transparency was huge. So I'd say those two things is not micromanaging and being transparent with your staff and the community. That's what I think led to the success.
That's awesome.
Oh, I just love that. You've been doing a lot of projects with the zoo over the last 12 years. Yeah. What goes into bringing some of those projects to fruition, like the sloth or Wolverine?
Winston the sloth. Visit Billings did such a good job helping us market that. And the state of Montana actually helped make that all happen too, which was wonderful. But yeah, it's a process, so it really depends on the animal itself. Now, the sloth in particular, this is an animal that we knew we wanted to bring in, part of the SSP program as well. And so really what it comes down to is locating an animal, first of all. And in the zoo world, I think there's this misconception that animals are bought and sold within zoos. And it's not. It's usually a loaning process is how it works. But anyway, particular instance, we knew that's what we wanted. And so we started looking for the sloth and found one, and then building the habitat. Now, this particular habitat we built in-house. And so it was a relatively painless process. If it's a larger habitat, so like our new waterfall refuge that's getting ready to open, that's something that we contracted out. We had some architectural design, and so a little bit more money involved in that, and a little bit more of a work process of getting the contractors in and understanding what it is we need and what have you. But it definitely is a process. And in the waterfall thing, we've been talking about that for 10 years, which is insane. And so, it just comes down to ensuring the contractors understand what it is we need and what the animals need for that matter as well. So it is definitely a process to build some new habitats.
So when you started with the zoo, did they have the school, or is that something that was added on to when you got there?
So they had the preschool already.
Okay.
That was something that they had already put in place, and it's actually a contracted business, basically. And so we essentially charge a rent to the owner of that business. But we liked it, obviously, and so that's why it stayed. We have downsized it just a bit because one of the things we lack at the zoo really bad is indoor space, and so we needed to reclaim some space that they were using. And so they currently are only using our homestead house now, but it's a wonderful program. And my son went through it, and I'll tell you, he was so well prepped for kindergarten. I was blown away. And so they do a really good job at prepping kids for kindergarten. And then obviously they spend, half their class time outside and around animals. What an awesome opportunity for those kids. I'm jealous of them.
I had a friend who had a younger cousin and I was new to Billings. They were like, yeah, I have to go pick her up from zoo school. And I was like, zoo school?
What's that?
And she's like, yeah, they go to preschool at the zoo. And I was like, what the heck? I want to go to school at the zoo.
It's awesome. It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Most people listening are probably going to be like, why does our zoo not have rhinos or giraffes?
Sure.
Tell us why.
I'll be happy to tell you that. I say it all over the state. So 2 reasons why. So first of all, we only highlight animals that are on the 45th parallel north. So you put your finger on Montana, you spin the globe, anything on or above that line, that's where our animals are going to come from. And we do that for 2 reasons. Number one is budget. As I said, we're all sick of hearing that we don't get public funding. So what I mean by that is if I would love to build a 10,000 square foot rainforest to walk through, but in order to keep that bad boy warm in the wintertime, that's going to be a hefty electric bill. If I had $1 million check coming from the state, city, county, whatever, every year to help pay for that, great. I would do that in a heartbeat, but we don't. So I did be mindful that we can afford what we build, and that, when we build something new, we can absorb that into our budget. So that's number one. But number two, and really more importantly for us, is it allows us to keep our animals outside 99% of their life. Now, other zoos do it, and that's fine. So if I had a giraffe, I'd have to keep that giraffe inside, for 3-4 months out of the year. We just don't want to do that. The zoos that do that, it works great, and they have the funds that they can build these giant indoor night houses for them. We just don't have that. Plus, I like having them outside. They are at the zoo at no fault of their own, so it's up to us to provide the best possible care we can. I really believe a big part of that is being able to be outside as they would in the wild.
Yeah.
So that's why.
We've mentioned a little bit this AZA accreditation and why it's important for the zoo. And so you mentioned right as you were taking it on, it literally got pulled out from under you.
Yeah.
What was the process that you guys had to go through to get reaccredited?
It's wild. So it is. So we took about 9 years to prep for it. And some zoos do it faster if they lose it, but for us, we wanted
that's
to make,
a long time.
It's a long time. We wanted to make sure our ducks were in a row. So, every year we'd be asked, are you applying? Are you applying? Not yet. We're not ready. And that one day, my curator, Travis, and I, we looked at each other and we said, we just got to do this. We can him and haw all day long, but sometimes you just got to take that leap, right? That leap of faith. And so we did. And I'd say the application was probably 500 plus pages. I mean, the application's nuts. It requires so many policies and procedures and written, ideas and beliefs and blah, blah, blah. So we did that. And then at that point, that application submitted, and then we have an inspection. And so an inspection is you get peers from other zoos, and for a small zoo like us, it's usually 3 individuals, usually somebody in operations, a vet, and then an animal caregiver of some sort. And then they come in and inspect the zoo, and they literally inspect everything. So AZA accreditation is not just animal care; it's literally safety, it's guest experience, it's conservation, it's education, it's the whole gamut. Literally every aspect of our operation is looked at over about a 2.5-3 day process. And so once that happens, then they write the report. That report goes to what is called the AZA Commission, which is a commission of about 20 to 30 individuals from zoos around the country that then look at what the inspectors found. They take the recommendation, they talk about it, and then we have to go in and do an interview with the commission. Talk about nerve-wracking. I will never forget that. I mean, here I am sitting in this one chair, and I got this giant commission of the biggest zoo directors in the world, sitting there staring at me. And then we leave the room, and they make their decision and call us back in and say, yes, you made it, or no, you didn't. There's 3 options. One is you're accredited, one is you're not accredited, and the other is actually a provisional accreditation, which essentially means you're tabled for a year. You have a year to fix the things they think you can fix, and then you can get an accreditation. So I'll never forget when we went back into the room, we walked in, they said, hey, we have some more questions. We walked in, and they were giving us a standing ovation, and that was it was an amazing experience for me.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
It was pretty amazing.
Goosebumps.
Yeah. It did. And it was emotional, and it was an amazing time.
That's
for me.
A lot of work. 9 years of work
a lot
went into
of work,
it.
exactly. And now, because we're in AZ, I am now an inspector. So it's such a full circle for me that I can do that and help other zoos. And so I love going to the small zoos that are struggling to, kind of help them get in that, in that headspace that they can do this. It's pretty cool.
Congratulations to you. And
Yeah.
that's
Thank
such a
you.
huge thing for you and your team to go through.
It was.
9 years is a long time for that.
Yeah.
So then, do you have to re-up that? Because we do with our accreditation. It's like every few years.
Yeah.
But
ours is every 5 years.
Wow.
And COVID, the one good thing that came out of COVID is that we got a bonus year. And so
Sweet.
it's 6 years for us. So I think we're up in 2025 is when we'll be up next.
Okay.
So, but we're already starting the process now. As you know, I mean, it's a process.
Do they update and change the requirements? And so then you're like, oh, I got to get these things fixed before they come out to
Yeah, every year they do, which is wild. Now, fortunately, a lot of times when those updates happen, they don't affect us, because usually it's like elephant care, diving safety, and for divers that are diving in pools and what have you. So for the most part, it's simple things to upgrade. But this year, there's a big upgrade in the DEI initiatives and what have you. And so, we're working to make sure we're up at par with that as well. So yeah, it does change every year.
That's awesome.
So I have kind of a strange question. What animal has traveled the farthest to be at our zoo?
Ooh, that's a good
To
one.
be at our zoo, our Wolverines. So our male Wolverine is from Sweden, and the female is from Norway.
That's super cool.
That's
So
cool.
they were far.
Did you
And
go get them?
I didn't go there to get them, but it was funny. So when we brought them in, obviously getting internationally shipping animals is not an easy task. It permits, and I mean, it's a nightmare. But when we went to bring them here, we couldn't find an airline, first of all, that would ship them for us. And then second of all, we couldn't find an airline big enough that would come into Billings that could handle the crates. And the crates weren't that big. I call foul on that. Anyway, the point is we had to fly them into Minneapolis. And so we got them in Minneapolis. So I went to Minneapolis to pick them up. But yeah,
You had to do that with Winston too, didn't you?
Yeah,
you
I did.
had to go drive him.
I picked Winston up in Michigan and drove him across. Yeah. But what looked like on social media, there was a 2-week, trip.
Yeah.
It was literally a day and a half. But we stretched it out to make it, make it look
fun.
like it. It was more fun that way. But yes, so that's our farthest.
That's super
Yeah,
cool.
pretty neat.
So how many, you talked a little bit, but I'm just curious with a zoo, like the types of staff you have. So obviously gift shop, admin, vet, zookeepers.
Yeah, so we have 30 staff members right now, which
Wow.
is wild. I don't know, that grew fast. But yeah, so animal caregivers, obviously the meat of the animal organization. So vets, we do not have a vet. So we actually contract our vet services out, which is relatively common for small zoos to do. But we're actually getting closer and closer to hiring our first full-time vet, which
That's
we're
cool.
very excited about. Yes. So obviously that, and then so front desk admission staff. I always say they're one of the most important jobs at the zoo because they're the first face people see when they come. We have an adventure coordinator that actually does all the reservations and what have you. We have a guest services manager. She's also our buyer at the gift shop. We have an incredible education team that does our social media and then of course all our education programming. We have an operations director now, which is wonderful.
Yeah,
We're
whoop,
so
whoop,
yeah,
go
I know,
Jess.
right? Which we're so excited to have that. We have a development director now, which is a first time for us as well. And we have so many, we have event hosts and event directors and we have so many, I hope I'm not leaving anybody out. We have so many incredible positions there that make that operation run. And we can always use more. I mean, that's the big thing is that, 30 people sounds like a lot for our small organization, but we probably need a good 10 more to really be where we need to be.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
And having a development director will be nice so they can kind of help take some of that fundraising and other grant writing components away so that you can do other things as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the operations director, to kind of move away from the day-to-day operation is something I've dreamt about for years. And so it's nice that that's finally happening and it's going well so far. So it's good.
What are, beyond just like being a zoo and coming to look at animals, what are some of the cool events that ZooMontana offers?
Yeah, and great question because it kind of goes back to what I was saying about the success of the zoo. The other piece of our success is that one of the things that I promised first and foremost is that we were going to become a community gathering place. And so we understood, and we need to understand that we are a great zoological park. We're a botanical garden, we're an arboretum, but we're an event space. And the reason we have to think that way is because it pays the bills. Events are an easy way for us to make sure we're getting the income that we need to operate. And so events are huge for us. And so there really isn't many events that we'll say no to. As long as you're not there spewing hate, we're gonna let you in. But I mean, we host so many different things, from weddings to company picnics to private birthday parties,
Ales for Trails,
concerts. We have a concert series. So there really isn't much that we don't do out there.
Boo at the Zoo is great.
Yes.
Boo at the Zoo. And Boo at the Zoo this year in 2022, the last one we did, we had 6,000 people come up. It was a one-day attendance record for us. It was it blew us away. It was wild.
That was my first time going to Boo at the Zoo with my nieces.
It's like I was one of 6,000.
Yes. Which I was like, didn't feel like 6,000 people. And I was
we absorb those numbers really well. We have a really bad bottleneck up at the admission windows, which we're trying to fix. But once you're in the zoo, we absorb those crowds very well.
Yeah. We came from Grandpa's farm, so we just made a whole fall day.
That's wonderful.
But we saw the line of cars coming up, and we're like, "Oh my gosh!" So we parked way far away and walked.
Sure.
And then there were a whole bunch of empty spots in the parking lot. And we're like,
course.
"What?"
Sorry, I know it's bad,
but it was well worth it.
Wonderful.
The walk was worth it.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
So you kind of alluded to, getting close to hiring on a vet and maybe fixing some bottleneck issues. What are some projects you're really excited for?
Yeah, so they always say a capital campaign is the worst kept secret out there, and so we are in the silent phase of the capital campaign. Not so silent, I know, but we're taking on several big projects, which is really the first capital campaign we've ever done, with the exception of when the zoo first opened. And so we're excited, and so we're looking to raise some funds for a couple major projects. One of which is the parking lot. And I know that does not sound like a fun project, but it actually came back in our feasibility study as the number one project people wanted to get out done
I would love to see that done for you
Well,
guys.
I got good news. It's happening.
Woohoo!
We are financially where we need to be for the most part with the parking lot. The only problem that we're having is figuring out when to do it. Yeah, we have over 70 events scheduled for this summer alone, and so we don't want to do it in the middle of the summer when crowds are going to be big. So we're hoping for a fall. So we'll keep you posted on that. But yeah, amazingly, we're already there, which is incredible. Blows me away. But the other projects are a new front entry design. We want to do a much more open plaza. We want to have ticket booths. So, we can have 6 lines as opposed to 1 line. So, we can get people through faster and make their experience better. That's big. A new vet clinic, which is huge. We don't have a hospital on site right now. So we want to build a hospital so we can, up our animal care, obviously, opportunities.
I love the idea with the vet care though. And I don't know if you're going to mention it, but you're going to have a window that people can watch through.
Yeah, we want to have a public viewing component to it, so guests can
Educational.
see. Can see if we're doing a procedure. Guests can be there to see that. We also want to do a learning classroom inside of it as well. We're working on a really, I think, pretty strong relationship with MSUB to provide a learning classroom for animal care students that they can actually learn from the vet and what have you. So I think there's going to be great opportunities there.
That's so cool.
And then the other one would be a snow leopard habitat, which is something we've been wanting to do for quite a while. Yeah, we're excited about it.
That'd be really cool. So if people wanted to, let's say some of our followers are really passionate about the zoo, where can they go to learn more about the zoo and also to maybe donate to the Capital campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So our website certainly is going to have quite a bit of information. If you want to talk about the campaign, contact me directly or my development director, Pete is his name. Real simple. You can just email info@zoomontana.org and we can get you all the information you need. And then we're always looking for volunteers too. So if you're interested in volunteering, there's a volunteer application online on our website that you can fill out and get over to us. Our volunteer coordinator, Lauren, will take a look at that and then disseminate it to the area that you want to help out in.
Yeah, and it sounds like you guys are doing a lot in just so many different facets, like helping with workforce things with students and MSUB, events, animal care. Right,
that's important to us. Obviously, we want to be an integral part of the community, as you know, and so that's really important for us to be involved in a lot of that. And we understand certainly in the animal world, in our world, we want to help individuals find the path to make that dream happen. But it doesn't have to just be in the zoological world. It can be working in a sanctuary or an animal shelter or being a vet. We just want to help them kind of with that path as well. And then obviously helping to retain in Billings. I mean, obviously I'm preaching to the choir here, but certainly, anything that we can do to help Billings thrive and grow, we're behind it.
When you're such an asset to the community is a great tool for, I think, talent attraction and retention. So
you're kind.
I can't wait to go out to the zoo next.
I love it.
No, I'm super excited.
Flowers are starting to bloom. Our daffodils are out, which is awesome.
I love the garden in the
garden
zoo.
is really great.
Yeah.
And you mentioned weddings, and like if anybody hasn't been out to the zoo and been through the garden, gosh, what a beautiful place
Such
for
a
a wedding.
gorgeous venue. And then the pavilion is super nice too.
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah.
Right. The pavilion was a
nice.
big thing for us to add so we could do receptions. We used to have a tent out there, but that thing was a beast to put up, and we had to put it up, and it was awful. So we decided to bite the bullet and build a pavilion, and so, yeah. It's exciting. But yeah, the wedding business is a good business. It's funny, we don't advertise our wedding business. It's kind of like if you know, you know. Now everyone knows. But wedding business.
We're on every continent but Africa, so.
Yeah, this is big.
It's a big deal.
But the wedding business it's a tough business. I mean, it's sometimes, family is, and I understand it's a big day and they want it to be perfect. And so it's tough. We are not, we do great weddings, don't get me wrong, but we don't advertise them.
That's awesome. Well, Jeff, we always appreciate talking with you, and we're excited to share your story with everybody.
Thank you.
We always like to end our podcast episodes with some rapid fire questions.
Oof, okay, I'm ready.
So you can wipe the sweat from your brow.
Sweating.
What is your favorite summer activity?
Canoeing.
Ooh, that's
That's
quick.
cool.
That was
Yeah.
quick.
That's
Where do
really
you keep canoe?
Anywhere I can.
Anywhere.
Mountains.
I like it.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Perfect.
What is your favorite event that is hosted at ZooMontana?
With the zoo. I just absolutely love seeing the kids in their costumes, and it's just such a big day for them. It's awesome.
It's one of the cutest things ever
Yes.
because
It is.
instead of waiting for them to come to your door, there's just hundreds of them
Absolutely.
in their cute, adorable costumes, and they're just running around and having a good time.
those blow up costumes are my favorite. Like the big
Oh,
blow up
yes.
dinosaurs, and the kids are like shuffling through. They're tired.
With the little
I love it.
arms.
Yes. Oh, I just love it.
What is the best piece of advice you've received?
Patience pays off. I think that's probably number one. But going back to that past story I said about the condor one, when Kevin, my supervisor, told me that life continues on. Why shouldn't you? That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jeff. It's been so much fun
My
having you on
pleasure.
here. Thanks for bringing your little friend.
Yes.
He's so
Absolutely.
cute.
Thank you. Proud of you for saying that.
Yeah, we can't wait to see you out at ZooMontana.
Looking forward to it.
Yes.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining. You can find the resources and tools mentioned in today's episode at thevault201.com. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe and share with a friend.
Thank you to Big Sky Economic Development for supporting The Vault at 201 North Broadway. Big Sky Economic Development provides leadership and resources for business creation, expansion, retention, new business recruitment, and community development.